Hey everyone, this is An Uncommon Love. This is Adrian Bowden.
And I'm Shon Bowden.
And here we are. We're here to reach the people that God has put before us. So whoever's out there listening, we appreciate you. And we're just doing this for anybody that is seeking, anybody that needs to know anything regarding marriage restoration, processes, beginnings, ends, now, future. We're here because God has ordained us to be here. And so we're just here for everyone. And I hope you enjoy our channel, but let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, so as you stated, there's a lot of things that have happened with us in our journey. We'll link some of the description below to hear more about our restoration process and what pretty much led up to it. There is an interview that we've done with another group, and we'll give you that video description. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so as part of my journey with marriage restoration, God pointed me to a ministry called Restoration Marriage Ministries. And so with their ministry, I was able to pull a lot from it, stand for my marriage, walk with God, because a lot of the information material they offered. Well, with that, when it was time for me to tell my testimony, I reached out to them to let them know, hey, my marriage had been restored. And so the beautiful people that they are reached back out, and they wanted to hear more about our story. So we did a podcast with them, and so it went really well. So we're going to kind of piggyback off of that, just to kind for anybody that's new, anybody that's never heard of our story. Plus we have people who have come from Marriage Restoration Ministries or Restoration Marriage Ministries and have already watched our story or listened to our podcast with them. But anybody who this is your first time knowing who we are, we want to kind of go back and in more, maybe a little bit more detail about what happened, what took place, and just as an encouragement. So
yeah, and I'm not sure if we even talked about the title of our channel. It's called An Uncommon Love, and the reason being for that is because staying in a marriage is not so common anymore like it used to be. There's different reasons for different people leaving and stuff. And sometimes it's just the straw that breaks the camel's back. And as my wife alluded to, I went through that process. And as a male, whether you might be a male who's listening to this or a female who's listening to this, who has walked away, my journey as opposing to walking away, I was going through some different things personally. I had a lot of personal things that were going on in my life. And I held a lot of my personal attributes and some of the different negativity that I had going on. I held it against my wife, even though, there were some things that I felt that maybe she should have done better. But then again, you have to look in the mirror and think to yourself, what did I contribute to the demise of this marriage? And I decided to walk away, and then there's a lot of details that we talk about, should I say, not we, but I talk about as to why I walked away. And not that it was even justifiable, but the point of it is every one of us are going to go through life, and we're going to deal with situations that might give that inkling that I think this is a good reason to walk away. And I'm here to let you know there's no good reason to walk away. We've been studying a lot of different things since our restoration, and it's a bunch of vows of this and vows of that. And when we get into a lot of those different vows of some of the things that we've been reading about, it calls us to take an inventory of self, not just of the marriage, but self. Because a lot of times we point the problem at the other person. We say that this is what they caused. This is what they did. Because he or she didn't do that, I decided to do this. And in a nutshell, when you really take that window, instead of looking through the window at everybody else's problems, and you turn that around into a mirror and begin to look at yourself, only then that you can take an introspective on what was it that I brought to the demise of this marriage? What was it that I did? What was it that I didn't do? And only when you start thinking about that can you really start working on restoration, not just for your marriage first, but restoration for you. And many of us sometimes, some of you that are listening that are, you're out there. I mean, you have already left or you're thinking about leaving. I'm here to let you know the first thing you need to do is ask yourself this question. What is the ripple effect of me walking away? What is the cause and the justification for me walking away? Who's affected by the things that I'm about to do or the decisions that I've already made? Because in all honesty, there are things that happen to us. Oh yeah, we think it's justifiable, but what is the ripple effect that comes along with that? Who's hurt by that? What children are affected by that? What family is affected by that? Maybe it's a job thing that gets affected by that. There's a lot of things that become effective when we make some unjust decisions. And I'm here to let you know there is a way out. And what I mean way out is to be able to fix that thing to where you don't have to leave. But it first starts with self. And as a man or a woman, you have to take an inventory of oneself. Talk about that.
Yeah, but even standing on the other side of things.
Right.
And you talk about restoration.
Right.
It couldn't be possible unless you take an inventory of yourself through your journey. So yeah, you may have a promise God has given us. If you stand for your marriage, I will restore you. But what happens between that A and Z, between he telling us he's going to restore us and the last thing is restoring? So in between, you have a process. And if you are not willing to make any changes in that process and you think it's just your spouse or whatever led to that demise or another person, you're shortcoming yourself. Your stand might be longer. It may be greater, because what God wants us to get in the midst of what he's doing is that I'm going to make a change in you. I'm going to restore not only your relationship or your spouse to you, but I'm going to restore your heart. I want to encourage you to be in love with me, because through that, I'm going to be able to let you be able to love when that person comes back or whatever. You're not going to have all the hang-ups, you know. So it's such a big process. That's probably just a little bit of it.
Well, you know, I heard you say something. I just want you to elaborate on it. You talked about the heart, that the Lord will do something with the heart. Why is it important, whether you're the person who's standing for your marriage or the person who's thinking about walking away, or maybe the person that has walked away? Why is the heart important in order to have a marriage that is whole and complete?
Sure. If you're not postured correctly, that means your heart as well. Honestly, you can't expect somebody to come back into the same mess. So there's a reason why there's time in there, built in there. There's a reason why it's a longing and a stand that's just like, my goodness, because God is fixing, he's pruning, he's trimming in order to manifest the right heart. So you have to posture yourself correctly so he can do that. Without that, you're going to get the same results, even if that person does come back. That's kind of seems to be like those premature comebacks where the spouse may come back for a moment, but then leave out again. Sometimes that can happen. Yeah. And it's like, okay, God, what else did I need to work on? Was I where I should be? You know, sometimes you may take that into question, but I really believe you have to have your heart posture right. So when that person does come back broken, because it's not going to be 100% all the time.
That right.
They may come back 80%. They may come back 20%. But if God said it's time for them to come back, you want to be as prepared as you can.
Right.
So that means there's something you have to let go. And people think it's impossible, but it's not. It's a process. It's painful, but it's worth it at the end. It's worth posturing your heart correctly, which lines with God's word, which lines with how he wants us to be. So.
You know, I was listening. I was telling my wife about this, and since we're still talking about the heart, there's this song I had been listening to. It's called Prodigal Son by Fred Hammond. Just so you know, you need to listen to it. And anyway, while he's talking about that, in the prodigal son returning. So let's just say you're the prodigal, whether you're the prodigal husband or the prodigal wife, and you're out there. As she talked about the heart, she talked about from the side of the person who's standing, making sure that the heart is right to be able to receive that person. But let's also talk about the person who's now got to humble themselves and say, you know what? I made a mistake. I messed up. I left. Let's say you've been gone for an hour. You've been gone for 2 days. You've been gone for 2 years, 2 months, whatever that is. And the Lord tugs upon your heart and says, it is time for you to come home. Prodigal son, prodigal daughter. It is time for you to come home. There is a posture in which you have to set your heart, because after all, we were the ones that left, right? So there's a posture that we have to set. We just don't go, okay, we're just going to walk back in the door and pick up where we left off. Because there is a time, there's a gap in the process of you being gone. So it seems like that the house and the children, the wife, maybe the mother-in-law, the family, they've moved on without you, and there's some bitterness there. There's some things in there. So the person that wants to come back, there is a posture that you have to set your heart to, and that is a posture of humility. To be able to say, you know what, I was wrong. To be able to say, I made a mistake. To be able to say, you know, I didn't do everything right. And I'm looking in the mirror. As the song goes, I'm looking at the man in the mirror, right? And I'm trying to make a change. But in order to make a change, there is the heart of humility.